Every organization out there, whether it's a tiny startup or a massive global company, has its own digital kingdom. It's filled with valuable stuff, right? And just like any kingdom, it absolutely needs to be protected. So today, we're going to lay out the blueprint for building that fortress using the core ideas of operational security.
So that's the million-dollar question, isn't it? The bad guys aren't showing up at the gates with catapults and battering rams anymore. Nope, they're coming through your Wi-Fi, through your internet cables. So how in the world do you defend against that? Well, you might be surprised to hear that the principles are a lot like building a real-world fortress. It all starts with a plan.
I mean, you wouldn't just start throwing bricks and stones in a pile and hope it turns into a castle, right?
Of course not. You'd start with a master plan, an architectural blueprint that says exactly where every wall, every tower, and every gate is supposed to go. And in the digital world, we call this a security framework.
Think of a framework as the high-level guide for everything you're about to do. It helps you figure out what's important, what the threats are, and how to organize all your defenses in a way that actually makes sense. It's the playbook that makes sure you're not just putting out fires, but that you're building a single, solid, cohesive defense. And just like with real blueprints, there are different architectural styles you can choose from. For example, you've got the NIST 800 series. That's a super detailed US government-backed set of guidelines, kind of like a very specific military blueprint for a fort. Then you've got something like ISO/ISE 27001, which is a global standard. That's more like an internationally recognized set of best practices for building a secure structure. The most important thing is to just pick a blueprint and actually follow it. But here's the thing. A fortress is so much more than just its walls. What really keeps it safe are the rules that everyone inside, from the highest-ranking general to the newest recruit, has to follow. These are the laws of the land. In our digital fortress, we call these laws security policies. A policy is a formal document, a rule book that lays out exactly how security is supposed to work. And let's be clear, this isn't a suggestion. It's the official law for protecting the kingdom's most important assets. And what's really cool is how these rules are structured. It's a hierarchy, you see. It all starts with the policy at the top. That's the big picture goal, the why. Something like, all gates must be secured. Then you have the standard. That gets more specific, it's the what. For example, gates must be strong enough to withstand a 10-minute assault. And finally, you have the procedure, which is the step-by-step how. Like, here are the 12 steps you must follow to lock the main gate every single night. And this is how those abstract ideas become real-world rules that everyone understands. An acceptable use policy? That's just the rules for how you're allowed to use the kingdom's tools and resources. A password policy? Well, that's literally the secret handshake or the secret passphrase you need to give the guards to get inside. And a non-disclosure agreement, or an NDA, that's basically a sworn oath that you will not reveal the kingdom's secrets to anyone. But here's the catch. You can have the best, most brilliant laws in the entire world, but they mean absolutely nothing if your people don't follow them. This quote is one of the fundamental truths of security. Your biggest vulnerability usually isn't a crack in the wall. It's a careless guard who leaves the door unlocked. So how do you manage the people inside the fortress? Well, here are two really clever strategies for that. Job rotation and mandatory vacations. With job rotation, you're constantly moving your people between different important posts. This does two things. It prevents any one person from having total control over a critical area for too long, and it helps spread knowledge around. And mandatory vacations, this is brilliant. You require someone to take time off. That forces someone else to do their job for a week, which is the perfect opportunity to audit their work and spot anything suspicious. Okay, so we've got our blueprint. We have our laws. Now it's actually time to start building. But here's the thing about a modern fortress. It can't just be about thick, dumb walls. It has to be smart. It has to be resilient. It has to be designed to handle failure. And that brings us to this absolutely critical idea, fault tolerance. It all starts with accepting a simple fact. Things will break. A wall will crumble. A server will fail. A gate will jam. Fault tolerance is all about designing your fortress so that when one little part fails, the whole thing doesn't come crashing down with it. So let's see how this works with something like data storage. We use a technology called RAID. Now think of RAID 0 as building for pure, raw speed. Your data is split up across multiple hard drives so you can read and write it super fast. The massive downside, if even one of those drives fails, poof, everything is gone, there's zero backup. On the other end of the spectrum, you have RAID 1. This is all about safety.
Every single piece of data is perfectly copied or mirrored onto a second drive. If one drive dies, the other one is ready to take over in an instant. Now, if you want something more balanced, you've got RAID 5 and RAID 6. RAID 5 is all about efficient safety. It spreads your data plus a special error-checking block called parity across at least 3 drives. This clever trick lets you completely lose one drive and still recover all your data. And RAID 6? That just takes it to the next level. It uses 2 of those parity blocks, which means it can survive 2 separate drives failing at the same time. Now that is some serious fault tolerance. Which, of course, brings us to the very heart of the matter. When you get right down to it, the whole point of this fortress, the plans, the rules, the smart, resilient walls, it's all to protect what's most valuable inside. It's to protect the crown jewels. And in our digital world, the crown jewels are our data. But listen, not all jewels are created equal. You have to classify them. Some of your data is public. It's like the signs on the castle walls for everyone to see. Some is secret, meant only for the people inside the castle. Some is restricted for only a handful of trusted advisors. And then, at the top, you have the confidential stuff, the kingdom's deepest secrets. Knowing how valuable each piece of data is tells you exactly how heavily you need to guard it. And hey, when you're done with that data, you can't just toss it in the garbage can. It has to be destroyed properly. The first method is to sanitize it. This is basically a digital deep clean, where you use special software to write junk data over the real data again and again until it's completely unrecoverable. Next up, you can degauss it. For things like old-school magnetic hard drives, you can hit them with an incredibly powerful magnetic field. This completely scrambles the magnetic platter inside, instantly and permanently erasing every last bit of information on it. And finally, for when you absolutely, positively have to make sure that data is never, ever coming back, you destroy it. I mean, physically shredding the hard drive into tiny, useless little pieces. Yeah, there's no recovery from that. But let's be real for a second. All of these high-tech digital defenses mean nothing if somebody can just waltz in the front door and walk out with your server. You still need physical walls. We're talking about things like man-traps. That's a 2-door entry system where you get locked in a small room until you're properly identified. Or Faraday cages, rooms lined with a special mesh that block all electronic signals from getting in or out. And don't forget the basics, like actual security guards and even simple screen filters so no one can read your monitor over your shoulder. Okay, we've covered the blueprints, the laws, smart construction, protecting the crown jewels. Let's tie it all together. What is the ultimate defense strategy? What's the single most important philosophy behind a truly secure digital fortress? It all starts with this one simple truth. A single strong wall is never, ever enough. Believing you can build one perfect, impenetrable defense is a total fantasy. Attackers are clever. They will always find a way to get over, under, or through a single wall. Relying on just one thing is basically a recipe for disaster. And that brings us to the single most important takeaway from this entire explainer. Defense in depth. This is the master strategy. It's the idea that you need layers. You have a moat, then an outer wall, then an inner wall, then you have guards patrolling, then you have a locked door on the treasure room. Each layer is a different kind of defense. If the attacker gets past the moat, the wall is waiting. If they get through the wall, the guards are waiting. It is security through layers. And so that's the question I want to leave you with. Think about your own digital life or your company's security. Are you just relying on one strong password, a single firewall, or have you actually built a true fortress with defense in depth? Really think about it. How many layers does your fortress have?